Released all the way back in 2012, the iPad mini made a splash in the tech industry, introducing a compromise between the iPhone and iPad lines, and was very successful in doing it. Hey, how's it going? I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and today we're going to be talking about the first generation iPad mini. How does it hold up in 2018? The iPad mini is an interesting device to me because it signifies a gap in the market of 2012 that frankly doesn't exist anymore. Bridging iPhones to iPads, a problem that's been practically eradicated since the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus. And perhaps that's why iPad minis haven't been updated since 2015. Now, while I'm a little bit unhappy about Apple still selling the 3-year-old iPad mini 4 for full price in store, we're not talking about that one today. We're talking about the OG iPad mini, the first generation. It's an interesting device, and probably the one that's aged the worst of the entire iPad mini lineup. So let's get right into this. First things first, you kind of have a post-Steve Jobs design with a basic but sleek aluminum build that keeps things light and thin. It's comfortable to hold and use, which was something that was missing from most tablets back in the day. It actually has the look and general design of the iPad Air, despite it being released a whole year before it. We have the then new Lightning port on the bottom, and on the top we have a, shocker, headphone jack. The speaker isn't very good, which is a bit disappointing considering this is otherwise a great media player, but in the grand scheme of things, that's a fairly minor complaint. For colors, we have a few options. A few because of a re-release in 2013. Originally, we had black and slate and then silver. Black and slate was later replaced with space gray due to issues with the color of black and slate, mostly being that the paint would wear and chip way too easily. This here is the space gray model, meaning it was released in 2013. So as you may have noticed, yes, my iPad's screen is pretty badly cracked. That wasn't me, but the previous owner, so I apologize for the not as good looking b-roll. Speaking of the screen, what exactly do we have here? We have a 7.9 inch screen with a resolution of 768 by 1024 and pixel density of 162 pixels per inch. This display is non-retina, which means that it doesn't look very good. You can see pixels. However, because the screen is still fairly large, it doesn't look that bad, and for Netflix or YouTube, it's absolutely fine. The low-powered screen definitely helps with battery life, which is nice because it already has a decent sized battery at 4,490 milliamp hours. Now, while I wouldn't say that the battery is amazing, it has performed pretty well for me, lasting a couple days of moderate to heavy use. Now, that will vary device to device depending on how used it's been over the years, but overall, I don't have too many complaints about the battery. Now, this is a tablet, but if you're over 40, you may want to use it as a camera. This iPad has a 5 megapixel rear sensor that can shoot video at 1080p. I certainly wouldn't consider it 1080p, but it technically is. The front-facing camera is even worse at 1.2 megapixels and the ability to shoot 720p. Now, while this is bad, it is still miles ahead of the iPad 2's camera, and considering that it was released in just 2012, I really can't complain. Most probably wouldn't use the back camera, but just the front for FaceTime or whatever, and for that, it's absolutely fine. But I've trashed the camera for long enough. Here's some shots I took so you can judge for yourself. This right now is being filmed on the iPad mini first generation. And I mean, it doesn't look great, but considering it's a 6-year-old tablet, it could be a lot worse. When it comes to technical specifications, the iPad mini really starts to disappoint with only an A5 processor rocking 512 megabytes of RAM. Up to this point, the iPad mini has actually sounded pretty good for the most part. Sure, bad camera, but I mean, it's an iPad. Unfortunately, this is where things start to fall apart. So I've already ranted about the A5 processor like 500 times on this channel. I mean, my top viewed video is literally just that. So I'm not going to bore you with all the details, essentially because the A5 chipset was the first with dual cores. Apple felt like they were able to support their devices for longer. Sadly, this was a horrible idea, as it resulted in the iPad mini, iPod 5, iPad 2, iPad 3 to an extent, and the iPhone 4S to all slow to a crawl with the release of iOS 9. iOS 8 was already feeling slow, and iOS 9 kinda just sealed the deal. So in its current state, I would say the iPad mini is practically unusable. iOS 9 is just so slow on it. Lag is constant, and doing even the most simple of tasks is a huge pain, and that shouldn't be the case, even if it is a 6-year-old device. There is a slight positive with iOS 9, and that's that most apps have fairly recent versions supporting it. In fact, you can right now download the latest version of YouTube if you'd like. It's super slow, but it does work. That said, I don't think that the app support is worth the pain and troubles that you're going to have with actually using iOS 9, and for that reason, I actually downgraded to iOS 8.4.1. It's a surprisingly simple process that you can look up if you'd like, and I'd fully recommend it as it absolutely breathed new life into this iPad. Eventually, I'd like to do a tutorial on it, but like no promises. But anyways, the iPad mini isn't fast now that it's on iOS 8, but it is a lot better than it was on iOS 9, and it works as a great Netflix/YouTube machine. So while the iPad mini performs pretty badly in 2018, it isn't unusable, and for that reason, I'd almost say it's worth picking up if you need a basic media player. But before we commit to anything we'll regret, let's take a look at the price. You can pretty easily find these for under $100, and I've even seen them as low as $50. If you really want one of these, I'd try to find a good deal on eBay.com and not just settle for the first $150 refurbished model. That price is ridiculous, and I'm surprised people are trying to get away with it. Actually, I'm not. I've been on eBay for way too long to be surprised by something as simple as that. But overall, I wouldn't recommend buying the iPad mini because I don't see the point. The only reason one might get it is for their kids, or again as a Netflix YouTube machine, but that's about it. I wouldn't use it for much more, it's just too slow. The size is really nice, admittedly, especially compared to the iPad 2, but that alone isn't enough for me to say you should go out and get one. If you really want a small iPad like this, I would try to find a used iPad mini 4. That's just gonna be your best bet. The iPad mini first generation is an interesting device, and it hasn't aged well, but it still shows an important time in Apple's history, trying to meet the demands of bigger phones without actually giving in. And with that, I think this video is pretty much over. Maybe hit that like button if you found this video interesting, and consider subscribing for more content just like this. You can stalk me over on Twitter and Instagram, links below, and thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and I will see you all next time.